Well, happy Saturday and happy weekend to you. I'm Fox 26 meteorologist Ramisha Shade. You know what time it is. It's time for us to talk all things tropics. It's been another super busy week with the tropics. Of course, we had the landfall of dangerous, monstrous, and deadly Hurricane Helene across the Big Bend of Florida. Last report, I believe, over 50 fatalities, unfortunately. Tremendous flash flooding, widespread wind damage, millions of people across multiple states were without power. So this is just another example of just how ferocious and how deadly these tropical systems can become. So I want to give you an overview of where we've been this season and talk about potentially what's to come for the rest of the season. Look at this. We started off with Alberto earlier on in the season, but now we are up to 10 named storms out there. And let's count how many of these have strengthened and become hurricanes. Of course, we had Beryl hit the Houston area as a Category 1 80-mile-per-hour hurricane back on July 8th. Of course, before that, it briefly strengthened to a monstrous Category 5. So that's one. We had Debbie, Ernesto, Francine, Helene, and Isaac. So that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 hurricanes so far for this 2024 Atlantic Basin season. How many of those have become major hurricanes? Well, that would be Beryl and also Helene. Of course, a major hurricane is anything Category 3 or stronger. So the next name on the list would be Kirk, then Leslie, then Milton. Do we have a shot of getting any of those systems? Well, let's find out. It looks like there's certainly a chance. We do have a couple of areas of concern that we're monitoring. Before I get to that, though, let's talk about Helene, or at least what's left of it. We're calling it post-tropical cyclone Helene, or the remnants of Helene. It's basically lost its tropical characteristics. It's kind of merged with another storm system, and it is in the process of dying out, winding down. Thank goodness, it's already done enough damage. So over the next 24 hours or so, it's basically just going to kind of sit near Nashville, Bowling Green, and Evansville in Tennessee and Kentucky and kind of rain itself out, wind down, fall apart. So notice the winds have really diminished in this, only about 15 miles per hour. The National Hurricane Center will no longer be issuing any additional advisories on post-tropical Helene. But even with a much weaker Helene across the Tennessee Valley, there's still the risk for more heavy rain that could lead to flooding. Of course, Helene produced widespread wind damage, gusts near 100 miles per hour for parts of Florida and Georgia, but the even bigger impact came from tremendous and deadly flash flooding across Florida, across Georgia, the Carolinas, even into Tennessee and Kentucky. So this is 3-day rainfall, and those purples and whites are some of the hardest hit areas, including Atlanta, over towards Charlotte, into the Asheville area in North Carolina. Certainly some very, very dangerous flash flooding occurred. In fact, here is the hardest hit area. This is our 3-day rainfall total. We're looking at North Carolina, western parts of North Carolina, and northwestern sections of South Carolina. Check this out, between 30 to almost 40 inches of rain in just the last 3 days. This is just south of Asheville and south of Hendersonville. So there were numerous high water rescues, helicopters evacuating people from the rooftops of buildings because that water was raging and there was no other way to escape and to get out. So thank goodness Helene, as I said, in a much weaker state, but still spinning, still churning just to the northwest of Nashville, south of Indianapolis. And you can see the green as we check out our satellite and radar. That is rainfall, and some of the rain has been on the heavier side at times. So Helene still bringing rain to Indianapolis, over towards Columbus, Ohio, down to Lexington, and even over into parts of Tennessee. So that's going to be the biggest issue with Helene as we go through the next 24 hours. Still that threat for clouds and, yes, more rain and even a low flash flood risk. This is a live view of Cincinnati, Ohio, and yes, you can see those raindrops on the camera. That rain is still coming down, and this is one of the side effects from Helene, still cranking out more rain. So you can see where we do have that risk for flash flooding for the rest of today into your Sunday morning. Highest threat, that 1 out of 4 risk, will be between Indianapolis, Lexington, down around the Nashville area, and even into parts of southern Ohio. So certainly watch out if you have any plans to be there, if you have any friends or family there. Yes, there's a low flash flood risk. So Helene, definitely continuing to weaken. We'll say goodbye to Helene likely by Sunday night. But we've got other systems that we are tracking out there. In the central Atlantic, we've got Hurricane Isaac and Tropical Storm Joyce. Now, Hurricane Isaac has strengthened to a Category 2 hurricane. That's pretty impressive in the north central Atlantic. Good news with this one, it is tracking northeast away from Canada, away from the U.S., and it should stay over land and gradually weaken over the next several days. Tropical Storm Joyce in the central Atlantic as well is also expected to remain basically a fish storm and stay out over the open water. However, we are still closely keeping an eye on these systems. Here's a look at Tropical Storm Joyce. Notice that it is going to gradually make a turn more to the north and northeast as we go into early next week and weaken to a tropical depression, then just a remnant low. So no issues with this one, although now it is sustaining that tropical storm force strength with 45-mile-per-hour maximum sustained winds. Let's talk about Hurricane Isaac, and notice it's up to 100-mile-per-hour maximum sustained winds with gusts up to 120 miles per hour and moving to the northeast around 18 miles per hour. So here's Canada, there's the U.S. You can see New York City. We've got London off to the northeast of Isaac. So Isaac is right in the middle over the open water, just where we want Isaac to remain. So even though this is a pretty powerful hurricane right now, it is also expected to drift north over the next several days, stay over water, and as it moves into cooler waters, it will gradually weaken. So no problems expected from Hurricane Isaac or from Tropical Storm Joyce. Now, let's talk about some other areas of concern that could blow up and become something to worry about. This is a tropical wave in the eastern Atlantic, and it's in the red. We don't want to see the red. That usually means danger or high risk. So that means a high risk now, a 70% chance of this tropical wave becoming our next tropical depression, tropical storm, or hurricane. Next name on the list would be Kirk. So this could be Tropical Storm or Hurricane Kirk by next week. High chance of that happening now. We've got several days to monitor this because it is in the eastern Atlantic. You can see the west coast of Africa behind me, and it's got several days to roll west across the Atlantic Ocean before we have to start worrying about that one. Now, this one I'm a little more concerned about. This is an area to watch in the northwestern Caribbean Sea, and now it's up to a medium 50% shot for tropical development over the next week. That means between now and late next week, we have a decent chance, a 50-50 chance of having an area of low pressure develop, likely just to the south and east of the Yucatan Peninsula. Then it would most likely track northwest into the Gulf of Mexico. Oh no, that just happened with Helene. We don't want that to happen again, but it looks like there could be a similar setup. And notice the general motion off to the northwest. And look where we are here in Houston, very close to that track. So we are going to have to keep a close eye on this one. Hopefully this doesn't pan out. But of course, if we do have a tropical system develop and head our way, that means we're really going to have to crank up those rain chances towards the end of next week. Even as we widen the view here and check out forecast rain through Friday, notice all of that tropical moisture already beginning to surge northward in the Gulf, beginning to push closer to the Houston area. Right now, between today and Friday, we are in that basically that rain total around 1 to 1.5 inches or less. But of course, if this tropical system develops, those rain chances could go way up if it heads our way. So we will be closely tracking that as we go through the rest of this week into next week. As far as water temperature, water temps, even with Helene rolling through, are still super warm. They've soared well into the 80s, and that once again will act as that fuel needed if this next tropical system can get going in the Northwest Caribbean and push into the Gulf of Mexico. So we will keep you updated day by day on what happens with that system. As we are getting very close to the month of October, these are some of the hot spots that we look at. to basically see where we have a higher than average chance for tropical development for named storms. And it's the western Atlantic, south and southeastern Gulf of Mexico, and the northwestern Caribbean Sea. So those are going to be the areas with a higher risk, although we can see development basically anywhere, but we are certainly monitoring that area the most. Of course, we are still in a typically, historically, very busy part of hurricane season. September usually the busiest month, and that's exactly what's been going on. We've had a ton of systems to monitor, and a big time deadly Hurricane Helene rolled through the Florida area and the southeast U.S. over the last few days. We're about to jump into October. The first few weeks of October can also be quite busy. I think once we get past the middle of October, that risk for hurricanes hitting the Houston area will start to go down, but it's still going to be there. We've got to get through the entire hurricane season before we can give you the all clear. So stay alert and be aware that yes, there could be a tropical system developing in the Gulf of Mexico, especially by mid to late next week. So things are quiet now, but don't let your guard down. Make sure you've got your emergency gear for any potential tropical storm or hurricane ready to go. And of course, if you haven't done so, make sure to head to your smart TV's app store. Just search for Fox Local, download it. Of course, you can get our detailed tropical updates, a lot of exclusive, tons of stuff to watch on there to keep you entertained and to keep you informed of potential tropical weather and other things that may be going on. So grab that Fox Local app and of course, check us daily for an update on what could be brewing in the tropics. Once again, I'm Fox 26 meteorologist Ramisha Shade. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.